This is the story of the one. As a custodial supervisor at a high school, he knows that during cold and flu season, germs spread fast. It's why he partners with Grainger to stay fully stocked on the products and supplies he needs, from tissues to disinfectants to floor scrubbers. All so that he can help students, staff, and teachers stay healthy and focused. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Do you want more success, more growth, more results? Then it's time for the Boundless Success Accelerator from the Modern Observer Group. This isn't your average coaching program. It's where top performers come to dominate. Weekly group sessions, on-demand coaching, a community that's got your back, and a power-packed library of tools to supercharge your business and career. No more excuses, no more waiting. Get in, level up, and start building the life you've been dreaming about. Visit us at modernobserver.com/boundlesssuccess to join today. Let's get you to the next level. Hello and welcome to the Success Showcase. I'm your host, Eric Lopkin with the Modern Observer Group, and with me as always is Chip Janiszewski from the Happiness and Success GPS. Chip, how you doing this week?
I'm doing great. How about you, Eric?
Doing fantastic. You know, it's sort of hard to believe that we only have a third of 2025 left.
It's absolutely amazing. And I mean, the weather has kind of been all over the place. It's really been not bad as summer at all. But I mean, we got from hot to almost have to turn the heat on. And other days this time of year, it's 90 degrees. I mean, but here we are, September. We're just 2.5 weeks away from the autumn solstice where the night and day equals out and we're heading towards the other way. But it's just been gorgeous out mostly for the last several weeks. So.
Yeah, and with only a third of the year left, it really is time for folks to kick into high gear. Take a look back at to January and go, all right, what did I plan to accomplish this year? And what have you gotten done? What haven't you gotten done? And that's what we're going to be talking about today is getting more done. We're going to talk about taking action. Because, intention is great. Ideas are fantastic. But nothing actually comes of them unless you take action. And that's where most people fall down. They will plan till they're blue in the face. But when it comes time to actually take action and do something about it, they hem and they haw and they hesitate. Now, we've talked about this in the past. We call it analysis paralysis, where you are stuck in the planning stage and not moving forward to actually implementing. So that's what we're going to talk about today is implementation. And, action matters. And it's not just about getting things done. I mean, when you're taking action actually begets more action. It creates momentum. And that gets you going faster and faster, better and better. Ideas don't have any value without the execution. So it really comes down to execution. And the other really big value in taking action and executing an idea is there's an old saying, in theory and practice are the same. In practice, they aren't. So when you actually put an idea into motion, that's when you find out where the pratfalls are, where the problems lie, where the obstacles are, so that you can refine the idea and overcome those problems to implement it better.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, it all starts with developing a clear and detailed plan as far as what you're trying to accomplish, what your objectives are, the goals and everything that you want to measure. And if you're working with a team, making sure everybody else understands that creating a framework for that and gathering information. But really, really important, you got to schedule it. We talk all the time about time management and so on and so forth. And if you can map that out, priority, and begin with the end in mind. I mean, it really, you could probably take 10 of our different podcasts that we've done and combine them all into kind of what we're talking about here today. Because I mean, a lot of it's just the same thing, hitting it from a different angle. But obviously, you talked about getting stuck in just the planning stages and so on and so forth, and it's ready, aim, fire. I forget the book, but it's one of my favorites where it says ready, shoot, aim, and then adjust. And it's one of those short ones that's all about doing that, but it's so important to just set that up and then obviously track your progress and so on. Go over the past week and so and see what you've done, the accomplishments. Have they matched up what you're trying to do? And again, keep it simple. Start with the main goals, chunk them down into the little tasks, make your to-do list that way, but just make sure that you're doing that. You talk often about doing a few things at a time, taking a break to refresh and so on and so forth. I mean, this whole process fits in.
Yeah, you've just gone through a whole bunch of steps that are necessary for taking action, and most of them make it a lot easier to actually move forward. Let's take a step back, though, and take a look at why people aren't taking action. And there are a couple of common causes. Um, the most common is actually fear of failure. People put too much stock in what someone else thinks. And I know you use the courtroom metaphor all the time, where it's an empty courtroom because everybody else is busy in their own courtrooms, worrying about what people are thinking about them rather than thinking about you. And that fear of failure really does hold people back. And the only failure is not trying. So if you're not doing the action, if you're not implementing your plan, that's the failure that you're actually fearing. Another major cause is a desire for perfection. You keep trying to get it perfect. Well, I hate to break this to everybody. Perfection doesn't exist. It's great to strive for it, but perfection is more of a process. You're always going to be making something better, but you're never going to get it perfect, especially the way things change and evolve, because what's perfect in 2025 may not be in 2027. So you're going to have to change it all over again. So perfection is a moving target that you're never going to hit. Done is and launched is better than perfect. And there's an entire system for getting things done called Agile, that it started with software development, but it has worked its way into a lot of other areas, where basically what you're doing is putting together the minimum viable product. This is just the bare bones of what a customer can use. And you release it as the minimal viable product. You get feedback from the customer. You improve the product. You get more feedback. You improve the product. And it keeps going until it's a final version of a product that's pretty much how it's going to stay. Now, again, in today's world, almost nothing stays at that final product. There's always software updates, hardware modifications, process creation. Don't worry about perfect. Just get it out there so that you can actually see how it works. Another reason that people fail to implement is they actually get paralyzed by too much information. And this is also very common. There are numerous books about the facts that if you offer somebody too many choices, they become unable to make a decision because they're overwhelmed by all of the choices. And back in, I think it was the mid 1980s, when the Soviet Union started to fall, we had in the United States an influx of Soviet citizens coming. And they were actually the perfect example of being unable to make a choice because they had too many choices when they walked into a supermarket. For most of us, we're used to it. We see all the choices, we take what we want, we ignore the rest. But for them, the idea of having that many choices in what they could eat paralyzed them, so they had no idea what they should be buying. So these are common reasons why people don't implement. And they're all, again, very common and very easily overcome, because none of them is that ingrained in us. We actually just have to make the decision, you know what? I don't care if it bombs or not. If it bombs, we'll take it back and improve it for the next version. I don't care if it's perfect. We can always improve it. And that's the key. Don't keep worrying about it. Remember the iPhone. The iPhone is now one of the most popular phones in history. The first version of it was not, because it had no app store. It didn't have 3G technology so that it could use data faster and connect for calls better. But it got out there. And the second version was much better. And the third version was better than that. And as we're recording this, we're about 24 hours away from Apple announcing the 17th version, or whatever number it is at this point. And it's always improving little by little. Sometimes not by much. Sometimes it makes leaps and bounds. But you can't make those leaps and bounds until you actually take action.
Yep. I mean, basically, we all get stuck, and we talk about this all the time in the what if or the yes but stage. When if we turn every but into an and, which is just action, step by step, you're one step closer to success with every failure that you hit. But it's all, in your mindset. And again, we've talked about all the tools, which is getting organized in the first place. What's the main goal? What are you trying to accomplish? What are the different steps that you need to do this? And if you can organize those, which you know me, I'm the spreadsheet nerd, where you just write them all down, then prioritize them and get them going. That's the key to getting started. And once you have that done, you just got to start ticking them off one by one. And if you can set yourself a timetable for doing that, great. But the main thing is do something, get it started. Obviously, have the plan ahead of time so you're not just stabbing in the dark. But it does work. And it's worked over and over again in so many different ways, as you well know. And obviously, you're exhibit A as far as how to do it. So,
Yeah, sometimes you just have to jump in. You know, it is so easy to get caught up in planning. I mean, I have literally launched organizations within 6 weeks just because we had the goal of what we wanted the organization to do. We got out the minimum we could, launched, and then expanded, and then improved, and then changed. But we wouldn't have known what needed to be improved or what needed to be changed without launching. Because actually taking action tells you so much more than research will ever tell you. So when you do it, that's where the learning is. So your planning does continue after you take action. A great example of this is drug discovery. When a pharmaceutical company discovers a new drug, it goes through clinical trials, and it goes through 4 phases of clinical trials. Phase 1 is, does it cause any harm? Phase 2 is, does it work on a limited basis? Phase 3 is, Does it work in the general population? And at that point, that's when, if it passes phase 3, it goes to the FDA for approval. But the clinical trials don't stop once it has approval, because there's also a phase 4 where they're taking the data from people actually using the drug, not in a trial setting, but in a real world setting, where they see, oh, we didn't come up with this side effect in the clinical trials. We didn't see it. Now we have to, change the label to make sure people know. Oh, there's a drug interaction we didn't find because nobody in the early trials was taking another drug. So their phase 4 clinical trials are about learning in the real world. And that's what you can do after you start taking action. Now, you don't just want to jump in and take any action. You want to execute with precision. And I think it was about 6 months ago, maybe a little longer, we had done a show about the findings that I had gotten from the 10X conference. And one of the things that was actually surprising that we talked about was the fact that the most successful people tell you you need to micromanage. We're all always told, oh, don't micromanage people, let them do it. But the most excuse me, the most successful people actually do micromanage. And the reason for this is they understand the goal, they understand what their vision is. So until they can get somebody else to understand it, you do have to take things step by step. You sweat the small stuff. You pay attention to all the details, because that's what makes a product or service great. When the first Macs came out back in 1984, the team that designed them, if you opened up a Mac, you would actually find the signatures of the design team etched into the interior of the computer, because they had put so much work into the details that they considered it almost a work of art. If you're hiring people to do things and they are experts in what they are doing, yes, you want to give them a little bit of free rein. You want to have their ideas in there. But you want to make sure that all of the details stay in line so that you're still achieving the goal. The thing with working with a team and letting people do their own thing is that it's a lot like herding cats. You have to keep them going in the same direction. And if you don't do that, what comes out is not going to be what you planned on.
Yeah, it's amazing as far as putting everything together. What you're talking about here is teamwork, but really, really good management over that. And obviously, we talk a whole lot about how you approach management itself. I mean, if you're a taskmaster with a whip, it's not going to work. However, if you are
Right.
out there and you're showing people the way to do it and you're encouraging them along the way, step by step, I mean, basically, it's just human nature, which we talk about all the time. I mean, if you appreciate people, you're going to get more out of people. And all these worries and things like that that they all have that keep them from doing things are going to go away too, just because somebody else is trusting them and patting them on the back and saying you're doing a great job and showing them their own self-worth, because feeling unworthy is really at the basis of all the problems that we have, and it's self-inflicted. It's just human
Right.
nature to do that. And once we realize, have that awareness that we are our own worst enemies, and seek help not only from ourselves but from our bosses and from other people out there, and realize why we're all in this. Um, it's so important to do that. So if you can ground yourself and just understand what reality is really all about, and that every problem that we have, if you write them down, there's nobody out there that cares about that except you. Don't take yourself so seriously because nobody else does. That is one of my favorite. Like that's at the bottom of my courtroom in your own mind slide. Don't take yourself so seriously. Nobody else does because they're all in their own courtrooms. Plain and simple.
Now, you just said something very important. It was why we're all here. And that's important when managing a team, or actually, even before that, when choosing a team, because the clarity of your goal is critical. When you're planning, you have to make it clear what the ultimate mission is. What are you trying to accomplish? Why are you trying to accomplish it? And we've talked about on other podcasts the importance of finding your true north or finding your why. But you have to be clear on what the why of your project is. And the members of your team, whether it's coworkers, potential clients, suppliers, they all have to understand what the mission is. They need to have the same clarity that you do because you all need to be working on the same mission. Now, I know I've talked about this before. There's an old military saying that there is the commander's intent. And the saying is, no plan survives contact with the enemy. And what this means is that the officers on the ground and the soldiers on the ground all understand what the mission is with crystal clarity. Because when they hit the ground running, what was planned behind enemy lines may not be feasible. It may not work. So they have the ability to change direction, to change strategy, as long as they accomplish the mission within the mission parameters. So they are absolutely clear on what the goal is and what major objectives have to be accomplished. How they get there will depend on the circumstances. You have to be able to do the same thing. Trying to stick to a plan in the real world is not always feasible. You have to be ready to adapt. You have to be willing to change and to make adjustments on the fly in order to accomplish the mission that you set out to do.
Absolutely. Nobody ever writes this plan down and says, I got it, implements it, and it's a success, and you go on to the next one. That just is not the way life goes. So, being able to adapt and to make adjustments and work with your team, celebrate your successes, regroup when you have to do something over again. It's so important to realize that these things are going to happen. But again, it does get back to your mindset, starting with yourself. And so it's so important.
Yeah, and I talked earlier about how people fear failure so they don't move forward. Well, every failure is a step forward. And I've been using Apple a lot as examples, but the Macintosh and the iPad are fantastic examples of this because most people won't remember the Lisa, which was underpowered, overpriced, but was the forerunner of the Mac. By every measure, it was a failure. But Apple was able to learn from it and turn out the Mac. The Newton, also ahead of its time in many ways and behind its time in many others. It was one of the first handwriting recognition tablets. And the handwriting recognition was so bad that it actually became the butt of a joke in a Doonesbury comic strip. But it was the forerunner of what later became the iPhone and the iPad. So they learned from it. They saw what worked, what didn't, what needed to be changed. So you have to be able to adapt. So basically, to sum up what we've talked about, is get out of your own way and start doing, because you'll learn more than you ever did while researching and planning. Don't get stuck to a plan, because you're going to have to adapt it on the fly. Break things down. Don't try to tackle everything all at once. As Chip said earlier, what we've talked about with time management, all of those things come into play. You're breaking things down into actionable steps. You're setting deadlines to make each of these steps happen. And the more you do, the more you'll get done. And very often, what you finish with after actually executing is so much better than what you imagined on a piece of paper. And again, another real world example. At the time of this recording, last week, or actually a week and a half ago, the Connecticut Humane Society opened up its Pet Resource Center in Wilton, Connecticut. Now, this facility was more than 10 years in the making, between planning and fundraising and finding a location. It took approximately 13 years from the time the idea came forward. But when people actually saw it in real life, everything they had talked about, everything that they had planned for, it was so much more than anybody had expected. And it's because our imaginations, as much as we say, there's no limit to your imagination, we do tend to limit our imaginations. Henry Ford famously said, if I asked people what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse, because they wouldn't have imagined an automobile. Steve Jobs had said, when he was talking about the iPhone, if he had asked people what they wanted in a phone, nobody would have ever said a touch screen, because it was unheard of at the time. Nobody had it. So only by actually taking action and doing this do you see what's really possible. And in many cases, it's more than you could have imagined. All right, so we are coming up on the end of our time here. So, Chip, what do you think is the big takeaway for our listeners?
Well, again, it gets back to mindset. Throw that fear of failure out. Realize that you shouldn't take yourself so seriously, but nobody else does. But one of the things that I thought about while I was listening to you rattle off these different instances of things that is going on is it's so important to work on yourself, and it will help motivate you if you get yourself into a personal development plan, whether it be reading or listening to this podcast or other things out there. Because if you are looking for evidence of success, it's everywhere. All you got to do is look for it and expose yourself to that instead of all these negative things that are going on. And just as you mentioned, there are so many instances just in this podcast alone of how it has worked. And there are so many more, including your own story.
Yeah, it is absolutely amazing what you can accomplish. But the key is you actually have to start doing it to accomplish it. The best laid plans of mice and men, as the quote goes, tend to go astray. And there's also another saying that I'm a big fan of: man plans, God laughs. Unless you're actually doing it, you don't know how it's going to turn out. I think for me, the big takeaway is that, yeah, if you're looking for failure, you'll find it. If you're looking for success, you'll find it. And what people have to remember is that the most successful businesses, the most successful people, the most successful of anything in the world, they've all failed more than they've succeeded because they learned from their failures. And those failures came from taking action. Nobody ever fails by making a plan and going, well, that's a really good plan. I'll put it up on a shelf and ignore it. They don't even try that way. But when you take action, that's when things happen. You're not going to be able to build a business until you take action. You're not going to be able to build a relationship until you take action. You're not going to be able to lose weight until you take action. Whatever it is you want to do, you're not going to be able to do it until you actually take action. We hear over and over again, oh, you have to put your intention out into the universe. Your intention is great. Your mindset is great. But that's just the first step. Then you actually have to do something about it. You have to take the action. You've been listening to the Success Showcase. You can catch every episode at xvadio.com, the Apple Podcast app, YouTube, Rumble, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Audible, Amazon Music, and wherever you find podcasts. Remember, make this your best week ever and make next week even better. We'll see you then.